Welcome to this edition of the High Strangeness Factor, copyrighted on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I'm your host, Steve Ward. On the High Strangeness Factor, we look into all aspects of the paranormal and the unexplained, from the past to the present, and look for the underlying parallels and patterns that connect these mysteries together. Andy, welcome back to the show.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing really good. Of course, we don't do every show together. I mean, it's a kind of a free for all, and I have a great group of co-hosts. I mean, I am so fortunate, and sometimes it's fun when I have more than one co-host on. But what I need to ask you about is that one of the previous shows you weren't on because I think you were either getting ready for or you were actually engaged in a genuine ghost investigation, and which you said you hadn't done for about 3 years.
Yeah, it was the first one I've been on for quite a while. I mean, no particular reason why I hadn't been on it. Just nothing really came up. I had a chance to get involved in. I was usually either doing something already or didn't quite fancy going there. But this was a place that's not very far from where I live, and it was quite an interesting investigation to go on. It's a place called the Kelvedon Hatch Secret Nuclear Bunker. It's one of those bunkers that was set up, obviously, in the 1950s during the Cold War, where our government could retreat to if there was a nuclear attack. It wasn't the main one, it was a secondary. There's another one that would have been first choice, but they would have gone there had they not been able to get to the other one. And although obviously no one ever died down there, it was open for about 20 odd years, 30 years. It was civil service manned. It was already prepared if there was a war, but of course nothing ever happened, so there was no real major panic ever happened there. It nevertheless has got a strange atmosphere. And we think probably because people knew what it was for. You know, if you went to work there, you often went there for quite a period of time, and you wouldn't be able to tell anybody exactly where you were working. You had to keep it quiet. So there was always a bit of ominousness about the place. So I think that's left an impression. But beyond that, we also know that when it was built, now I say built, it was actually dug down. It's actually 4 floors underground, 4 floors high, but going downward. They did recover some Roman artifacts, so we know the area definitely had some Roman occupation at some point in the past. So there's a kind of an additional link there to something. But also, in addition to that, a number of investigations that have happened there, people have said there's something there, something very old. I mean, some use the term like elemental, something along those lines that's much, much older. And, you know, often sort of mediums who've been on the location have said there's something different about this. It's not to do with the 1950s or 60s, it's something else. And that really has occasionally shown its little face, if you like. It's more of a sense of feeling of something being there. But I just tell you a funny little story, just quickly. When I was growing up at school in my hometown, there was always this little rumour and story that there was a secret nuclear bunker somewhere nearby that, you know, that was all top secret and all hidden away that no one really knew about. But it was always one of those kind of stories you tell as a kid, you know, you don't really believe it. I used to find out, of course, years later, it really existed. It was a nuclear bunker, and that was quite a surprise. But I've been there, probably about 5 or 6 times. I was actually there on the very first investigation that was ever carried out, because the guy it was farmland, he owned the land. The government approached him, I say, in the 1950s, so they wanted to basically make use of the land to build this bunker, and obviously sought his permission, but he couldn't really say no. But so basically they paid him, they built this site underground, and it was just part of his farmland that was left to one side. When the Cold War really came to an end, it was clear these places were never going to be used or needed. They basically said to him, give us a bit of cash, you can have it. So he basically bought the thing. It was largely empty, and he spent quite a bit of time gathering together bits and pieces, old desks and computers, that kind of stuff, radio equipment, to actually flesh it out, if you like, to make it look like it used to be. And then we opened it up to the public as somebody who could go on tours. Now, the funny thing was, he was related, albeit quite distantly, to a member of my old ghost investigation team. And
Wow.
right. And James put it to the guy who owned the site, said, you should let this out at night for ghost investigations. We'll give it a try. And it was a really good night. There were some strange noises, a few sightings, all sorts of things. So it was a good location. So we had high hopes of something interesting would happen on the night. Unfortunately, it was a bit quiet. Not really an awful lot happened. But as you probably remember previously, I sent you a bit of video footage of something that we recorded.
Yes.
On a previous investigation. which is all very strange. Now, what I can do is, because we've now moved to the Spreaker, I can add a description of this show, and when it goes up, I'll put in a link to the video footage.
Oh, good.
So people see for themselves. But what actually happened was, one area of the nuclear bunker is set up as a little mini hospital. It's not really a hospital at all. In fact, we're not even sure if it was used for that for real. But nevertheless, there's the kind of screens you get between hospital beds, and they're put in place. Now, there's a couple of old screens that are pushed to one side. Behind the screens, there's some old mattresses and a wall. Nothing else. Nothing else at all. But in this video clip, there's some kind of strange face appears between the blinds. Between the screens. It's there, and as the camera pans past, it jumps backwards. Now, it wasn't spotted at the time. It was only watching the video footage later on that someone spotted it. I thought, what on earth's that? So we've actually got this strange image captured. And it is really quite strange. We can't really
It's not clear. To me, it almost looks like it's somebody wearing a very creepy mask, but it's hard to say.
Yeah.
Because you just see kind of a slit through the curtains.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when I've slowed it right down and zoomed in, it does look a little bit like a face. It distorted, more like some kind of mask.
Yeah.
But it does look like a face of someone. It's very strange.
Very creepy. Okay, well, that's great that link will be up there. And the next time we do some banter together, I have a question about a classic British TV show. And I won't talk about it now because we're going to get to our guest, but I have some questions about the location that it was filmed that you may be able to enlighten us on. Okay. We have without any further ado, our guest today, Brittany Sayre, is a Point Pleasant, West Virginia native and a Mothman enthusiast. She works at the world's only Mothman museum and their sister store, Point Pleasant Trading Company. Brittany also is a dance teacher and the reigning 2019 Pure International Miss. She is one of the elite 3 TNT Hayride tour guides at the Mothman Festival, and that is the dreaded TNT area where the Mothman was first seen over half a century ago. Brittany, welcome to the High Strangeness Factor.
Hello.
It's great to have you here. I know you're really busy, and I really appreciate you giving us this time. Now, you and I, we share some interesting duties that we'll get into a little bit later at the Mothman Festival, and a little bit later we're going to give people an idea of for the 5 people out there in Radioland that don't know the legend of the Mothman, but a lot of people don't know about the Mothman Festival, so we'll kind of paint a picture for them. But there's a whole other aspect of your life which has to do with what would we call it? You have been in several different pageants and have.
Yes.
Okay, was your first one the Mothman, Miss Mothman?
It was indeed.
Okay, you gotta tell us about what the Miss Mothman pageant is all about.
Okay, well, back then I was Miss Mothman of 2010, so we're coming up on 10 years since that happened.
Okay.
But basically, it's to do some royalty to reign over the festival. I had always been interested in Mothman, and it's kind of been part of our family's history, and growing up in Point Pleasant. So obviously, that was a go-to choice for me as to what pageant I wanted to try first, because that was actually my very first pageant ever. So,
and you won that pageant in 2010.
Yes.
Okay. I never attended into the pageant, so I started attending in 2006. So shame on me for not seeing you have the crown placed on your head.
But where were you?
Well, I don't know. Probably that's before I became absorbed in the festival, and I was just a happy-go-lucky attendee, buying anything that had Mothman stamped on it. And now you and I have got actual duties there. But just before we get into your the other pageants and the current one you're involved in, let's talk about how did you I remember now that you do have some family history with the Mothman. Was it your father was part of the National Guard?
No, my pawpaw, which if you're not from the Appalachian area, that's my grandfather.
Okay.
On my mom's side, his name was Pickle. I kid you not, Pickle. But his real name was William, but at first grade, his teacher was like, Billy, you're as little as a pickle, and it stuck. So everybody knew him as Pickle Spears. But he was in the National Guard in West Virginia for 43 years, and he was active when all the Mothman stuff was going on. And if
which
you
was
heard
in the middle 60s, primarily 66, 67.
Right. He was, if you've ever heard the story of the two National Guardsmen that were out in the TNT area working on a vehicle that saw this Mothman thing.
Yes, that's one of the ones that's recorded in John Keel's book, The Mothman Prophecies.
Yes, that is actually, we're 99.9% sure one of them was my pawpaw.
Oh, that's great.
Which we wouldn't know because he's been gone since 2007. But all of the information we have points directly to it. Like the guy that we have confirmed who was one of them is the guy that my pawpaw always had to work with. And they were, almost always assigned to the same thing.
Right.
So, I mean, and my mom can remember she would have been 9 years old, 10 years old at the time, depending on when it actually happened. But she remembers him coming home and talking about something to my grandma, and she being like, "Don't talk about that; they'll say you're crazy."
Yeah.
And
well, that's got to be it.
So
well, it doesn't get much better than that to have a family connection to the Mothman.
Absolutely, and I enjoy telling people about how, like, both my parents. Now, my dad didn't grow up actually in Point Pleasant; it was in Mason County, but a little bit of ways from Point. But they both remember seeing the UFOs, the lights coming down from the sky and then bouncing right back up, and just weird stuff happening. And my nanny, who was my grandma that's married to Pawpaw, she worked at the county clerk's office at the courthouse and was across the street from Mary Hires' office. They were actually really good friends. So,
okay, and for those that don't know, Mary Hire was a local reporter that teamed up with John Keel. And they would go to an area down around Gallipolis Ferry, south of Point Pleasant. And you're right about the lights. The strange lights were going overhead all the time. I mean, this was such a hotbed of strange activity for that period of time. So that's anyway. We'll get more into that later. But so now I don't know anything about these pageants really. So kind of tell us what. Did your first win kind of give you the bug where you thought maybe you'd want to pursue this into perhaps more recognized pageants than Miss Mothman? not belittling. I'm not belittling Miss Mothman, mind you.
No, no offense taken. No, I mean, it obviously the bug did bite me, or I like to say the moth bit me.
That's good. That's good.
But yeah, after I won my first one, I kind of got more into it because I just genuinely enjoyed it. I've always been on stage since I was a kid because of dance, and I enjoy talking to people, obviously. So I thought, oh, that's a great idea. So I went ahead and tried out some other ones, and then I stumbled upon this system called Pure American Girl at the time, and I thought, you know what, I like what they stand for. Because they are community service based, which that's a big part of what I do. It runs in the family, my pawpaw National Guard, my grandpa was in the Army. We're community service type people. So
tell us about some of the duties. I know you're not just going out there being just glamorous all the time. You actually have no, duties. Would you say you're kind of an ambassador? Is that kind of the way they look at it?
In a way, yes. Lots of what we do, because we're with Pure International now, as we have gone international. As a matter of fact, that's why I was in the UK in January for their package. It all works out now.
Where was that held? Was it in London or elsewhere?
No, it was. Oh gosh, I just lost the name of it.
That's all right. It'll come back.
I know that we were close to Manchester.
That's good enough.
But yeah, we left a little early. My family went to London, then Liverpool, and then Manchester.
So did you have time to kind of look around, to do a little bit of touring, or was it mostly work?
Oh yes. We checked out all of the the sites in London, and we actually went to a place that turns out the Sayres originated in 1623.
Wow.
But we got to go in a church, and it's little place called Leighton Buzzard. That's where my family actually originated from. So we got to go in church that they had helped build and see where a lot of my ancestors were buried. So that was pretty cool. And of course, we checked out all of the Beatles museums and everything in Liverpool.
You didn't find any rich relatives, any barons or whatever that could bestow some wealth on you, or
No, unfortunately not.
okay. Well, that's the way these Hallmark movies work. They
Exactly.
yeah, I know. I don't know if Andy, if you get the Hallmark channel or anything like it over in England, but good Lord. Anyway,
I
I
would
won't go there.
avoid it like the plague. I know exactly what Hallmark Channel is like. We do get it on Sky over here, and no, I would never watch it in a million years.
I have to watch it under duress. The missus watch it all the time. The same actors in different parts, same plot.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, but so kind of, can you tell us how? Just kind of give us an idea of the steps it took from you being Miss Mothman, and now you're Miss International. It's International Miss, is it?
Yes. I started out with Mothman, and then, like I said, I found the Pure system. And in 2013, I won Miss West Virginia, which then advanced me to the national pageant, where I won the National Miss title. And then I ended up winning the Ultimate National Queen title, which is based on who does the most community service and shows leadership skills and good communication skills with, the rest of the staff and the royalty and everything. And then I loved it so much, I decided to stick with it. And I was the National Sweetheart for 2016. And
Wow.
then the Ultimate National Sweetheart. And now I have gone up to the top of the ladder, and I give up my international title in about 6 days.
Wow. Okay, that's why you're so busy. You're going to be making a transition. My
Yes.
my experience with pageants is watching when I was a kid, the Miss America pageant with Bert Parks. Andy probably doesn't know who Bert Parks was, singing "Here She Comes, Miss America" ad nauseum every year. Yep. So, and then one time when I was in England in '73, they had the Miss. I don't know if it was Miss Universe or Miss World, and I was watching it at my cousin's house, and Miss America, Miss USA won on that one. So I could puff out my chest with pride. Anyway. Okay, so what can I ask you some of the things that you that they ask you, or some of the things you have to do to win these things?
Well, with the Pure system, which that's basically my whole life. They do an interview where they ask you about what you do in your community and your job and your family and things like that. Nothing political or anything.
Right. But do you mention
answer.
Brittany? Do you mention the Mothman?
Absolutely.
Okay, and you still won. That's good.
They all know me as that Mothman girl. Half of them don't even know my name. They're just like, "Oh, you're that girl with the Mothman." Yep, that's me.
So it's a plus then. That's good.
Yes. But they do interviews, and then you have to model for international. We had to model a national costume. I did Statue of Liberty. It turned out really cool, and I even had one of the torches that when I hit a button, it made it look like it was actually on fire. High tech stuff.
Wow. And you didn't get electrocuted. That's good.
No, thank goodness. Which with me, that's shocking. But
I get it. That's shocking.
But and then of course the evening gown where you have to be all elegant and stuff, which that's actually my favorite one, believe it or not. But actually, there is a couple of different optional competitions you can do as well. And my kind of go-to one that is probably another reason why they all call me, that Mothman girl, is I actually do a, pretend commercial for a product called Moth Off, which is Mothman repellent.
You would want that, surely.
It won't stop the Men in Black, but it'll stop the Mothman.
Well, that's good.
Yes.
So you've been now. What kind of things were you involved in this past year with your present title?
Oh my goodness!
Just a few. I,
Well,
so
obviously, I went to England. So that
it's not
was awesome.
it's not a life of leisure then.
No, it's a lot of work, but it is. You get what out of it, what you put in it. If you want to go out and do everything you can, it's really fulfilling. It's awesome, and mainly it's just getting out there and helping other people. I like to work with the veterans a lot, and I also like helping with the Ronald McDonald House in Huntington. So just any kind of community service I can get into, I try to get in.
What do you do at the Ronald McDonald House?
Well, actually, we like to take pop tabs. It's no joke in our family that literally we've dug them out of trash cans before because we're crazy like that. But we take them the pop tabs, and I usually do a pageant, which I didn't get to do this year because of COVID. But I usually do a fundraiser pageant, collect items for the house, and take them up there. And we've probably donated easily over 5,000 items to them in the past 3 years. But I've taken them lunch before. We helped with different events there. Just lots of good things to help there.
Just interact with children, that sort of thing?
Yeah, more so their parents and siblings, but yes.
So what you're going to be giving up your crown in just a matter of days.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I remember seeing Miss America, the former Miss America, being teary-eyed and giving up her crown, trying to smile and all that stuff back in the old days.
Yes.
But so what's next for you? Are you still going to continue on the pageant, I don't know, scene or circuit or however they call it? Is there another step? Or
actually? Well, right now I may take a little bit of a break, but we all know it won't be very long. But it's I'm busy with work and Mothman and all that stuff, so I need to take a breather and get back to my roots there for a minute. But I probably will keep doing them because I like them too much to quit.
Okay, now we can always swing back to the pageant stuff in case there's something else you want to talk about. But I want to talk about a couple of your present jobs right now, and I want people to know that we're going to get into the real heavy stuff pretty soon. We're going to be talking again. We're going to be talking about the folklore and the classic folklore of the Mothman and so forth. And we're going to talk a lot about the Mothman Festival. And then we're going to get to the real good stuff, which is the jobs that you and I share at the Mothman Festival. But now, right now, I didn't know that you're working at the Mothman Museum right now as well, right?
Yes. I'm there Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
Jeff Walmsley is the curator of the Mothman Museum. He's the co-founder of the Mothman Festival. He was 6 years old when the bridge collapsed. The Sliver Bridge collapsed at the end of the year of this all these strange goings on, and he actually heard the vibration when he was a kid at home. He was Linda Scarberry's paper boy. Linda Scarberry was one of the main witnesses of the Mothman. Those first sightings, even before it was called the Mothman. So, in the museum, we have to describe the museum. This is so well done, so high quality. You got your great merchandise, your T-shirts and everything Mothman. But he's got you can throw in some stuff here. He's got memorabilia from the film, The Mothman Prophecies. He's got original articles. He's even got a magazine that my buddies and I published back in the late 60s called The UFO Phenomenon that had a Mothman article in it. So do you work behind the counter selling merchandise?
I do a little bit of everything, honestly. And one thing I wanted to throw in there that we do have that I think is really cool is we have the original handwritten eyewitness accounts from Linda Scarberry.
Yes.
So if you want to see the real deal, they're there.
And also, last year, Jeff got a hold of, through the antique place down the street, some of the original manuscript that John Keel had written. He got it for a really good price. It was one of these things that was just somebody had in their archives. And so, yeah, that's just, he's got my friend, actually Brian Zeller, who does the music for the show. He donated he by pure happenstance, he was out camping one time. He met the guy, the photographer that took a lot of the original photographs of the Sliver Bridge collapsed. And he did it. It was for the state. It was for the federal government or whatever. But he got copies of those and donated that to the museum. So it's just very well done, and he's just expanded it. And there certainly is no harm in buying a Mothman T-shirt or one of the many items they have. But they've just done such a good job. Now. They also, well, yes, and listen, and it's great to see your smiling, upbeat face there. It makes people want to buy more stuff.
I don't know about that. They haven't seen me before coffee.
Now, across the street where the old Mothman Museum used to be is this newer business they have?
Yes. We've been open about a year and 2 months.
And what's that, the trading company?
Yeah, it's the Point Pleasant Trading Company.
Okay.
It actually was, we kind of came up with the name Trading Company because Daniel Boone had a trading post in Point Pleasant during the Revolutionary War.
I've only been in there once because it hasn't been open that long. But tell us what kind of things are in there.
Oh my gosh, it's a little bit of everything. It's kind of a general store type thing, but with cryptids. We have
general store with cryptids. That's the best.
Yeah. It's like a Cracker Barrel for cryptids. But we have lots of Mothman things, obviously. We have a whole Bigfoot section. Lots of Flatwoods Monster. Different, like, Chupacabra and Yeti and just a whole bunch of different ones. But we have some of the things that we get from, like, vendors for the festival there. We have a lot of things from Liz Pavlovic and Jellicoe, if you're familiar with them.
What do they make?
We also actually...
What kind of things do they make?
The Jellicoe makes... They have Mothman dolls, or right now we have a shirt that says the Cryptic Crusader, and it's got Mothman on it.
Okay.
It's super cute. But our big thing, though, is we have the official Mothman root beer on tap. So you can come in and get a fresh poured cup of Mothman root beer. And
I have had it. It is delicious, by the way.
Yes, it is. It's dangerous to have within reach.
And the Point Pleasant Trading Company and the Mothman Museum are right in the heart of downtown Point Pleasant, a stone's throw from the classic Mothman statue, which stands there. It's stood there majestically since 2003. What was the earliest Mothman festival you went to?
Actually, 2010.
2010. Okay.
For millions of years since it had started, but I was in marching band, and it never failed. We always had a competition that day, so I'd never make it, and I was so upset because I loved it. I wanted to go so bad, but we never could make it because we weren't home. And it was sad. But I'm glad I finally got to after I graduated.
Well, yes. Well, so am I. And let's to kind of describe a little bit. We won't get too much into it, but you know what? Let me do this here first. Let me just do my little intermission here. And you are listening to the High Strangeness Factor, copyrighted on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I am Steve Ward. My co-host today is Andy Mercer, and we are talking to the delightful Brittany Sayre. It says that right on my cue card here, Brittany. So that's.
Oh, well, thank you.
There we go. So I wouldn't miss it. But let's to kind of just give people the few people that don't know much about the legends of the Mothman. We'll talk about that a little bit. But let's talk about that in respect to how you discovered the Mothman. I mean, have you lived in Point Pleasant all your life?
I sure have.
and for people that don't know, Point Pleasant, West Virginia, is right on the Ohio River. It's across from Gallipolis, Ohio. So it's I live in South Central Michigan. All I have to do is cut right through Ohio, kitty corner, or catty corner, some people say, and you're right there in West Virginia. It's only 6 or 7 hours for me. So. And it's a beautiful area. I mean, you've got the mountains, you've got the river, you've got the history, You've got other museums. By the way, is the River Museum open yet? Do you know?
Well, they just tore down the buildings
Oh.
about, oh goodness, a few months ago. But it's actually going to be in a newer location. It's if you're familiar with where Harris's Steakhouse was,
Yes.
it's going to be that lot right beside of that.
Okay.
So
Let me
they knocked
explain.
down some buildings there.
Let me explain what that is. The River Museum.
Okay.
My friend John Lee and I got in there maybe a year before it burned down, and it was all about the history of the rivers, and it had these beautiful models of the various ships and boats that traveled the river. It had a great mock-up of the Sliver Bridge and the 13th I-bar that failed. They had a thing upstairs, Andy, where you could go in and simulate being in a tugboat going down the river. So almost like a video game, but you've got the whole all the windows in front of you and the vast river, and so you can turn it to night. You can try and navigate past the where the Sliver Bridge used to be. The old Sliver Bridge is still the train bridge. So I was trying to get past the train bridge, and I'm afraid I hit the piling a couple times. So I'm. And then one time I almost went up and almost hit Main Street with the boat, which is not easy to do. But it was funny because if you turn the wheel really quick, I mean you're on flat ground, but you're looking at the water and the scenery tilting, and you get that feeling of movement, even though you're not moving anywhere. Anyway, the point is, it was such a fabulous museum, and they had a fire. And I know they salvaged a good part of it, but so many really, really great things were destroyed. So I'm glad to hear that they will be coming back at some point.
Yes. I actually got to see the official mock-up of what it's going to look like. I think it's going to be a really nice building.
Okay, well that's good because and I talked to the ladies. The ladies there, they've written this great book on the Sliver Bridge, everything all about it.
Yes.
And I don't recall their names, unfortunately, but they were.
It was probably Ruth and Martha Fout.
Okay, great, thank you, because they were so great to talk to, and so full of information. And I'm glad that they going to have some longevity there. So tell us about, how is it that you, as a young lady, a young girl, I mean, did your parents, instead of the boogeyman, did they scare you with a Mothman about going to bed at night, or how did that work?
No, not really. Really, when I was little, I mean, like, I remember them saying things about Mothman, but nothing really was, kind of mainstream until the movie came out. I remember that very well.
And that was 2002, I think.
Yeah, I was 10.
Maybe 2003. I'm not sure, but yeah.
Pretty sure it was 2002, I think.
And so, did you see the movie when it came out?
No, actually, I didn't, because at that point in my life, I was terrified of everything. So going to a scary movie, or one that I thought was going to be scary, was not a good idea. In later years, I've watched it. I'm like, yeah, that wasn't that scary, but hey, that's how it goes. But I can remember when the movie came out and all the kids at school talking about it. Oh yeah, the Mothman, and that's when my pawpaw and my mom and dad started kind of telling me different stories about when they were growing up, and when pawpaw was on active duty for all of the stuff in the TNT area. And of course, I knew about the bridge from early on, because that's just something, when you grow up in Point Pleasant, everybody knows about the Sliver Bridge, and it's almost just as raw to most people today as it was, 50 some years ago. But the one thing I remember very vividly is all the movie theaters around. When the movie came out, they were lined up clear down the block, out in the street. The radio station was there. It was like a national holiday.
I'll be darned. Well, cool. That's a contrast, because when John Keel first wrote the book, he said it only sold about 25 copies in all of West Virginia. Right. It was about 10 years after the events, and it just wasn't promoted well. But I have actually grown to really like the film. My first reaction was a little negative, because I didn't think it captured enough of the book. But
right.
Andy, have you seen the film, The Mothman Prophecies?
Once or twice.
Okay, just checking. I John Keel was interviewed on the Art Bell show. And Art Bell, strangely, now Art Bell. Did you know who Art Bell was, Andy? He was.
Yes, I've heard the interview.
Okay. Oh, okay. Right. Excellent.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I used to, when I discovered Art Bell, man, I was in heaven. That was good stuff. But he, right when the film came out, he interviewed John Keel, and Art Bell didn't know anything about the Mothman. That Keel's writings and the Mothman had been lost for so many. I mean, for me, I lived and breathed John Keel and Mothman, for decades. But he said, Keel said that he liked the film. He said that it really captured the atmosphere, the feeling of paranoia that he experienced during these events. And there's another thing is when Brent Raines, who wrote a great book recently on John Keel, there was when John Keel found out about the screenplay that they had written for the movie, he was actually giddy because he felt that they finally, even though they updated it and they had the character that was him married and so forth, it was kind of like, yeah, they had captured some of the, as he put it, the underlying truths about it. So anyway, that was the catalyst that kind of brought everything home for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Brittany.
Yes.
And so when did you finally see it?
I was probably in high school.
Okay.
I can't remember, but all I remember is when it did come out, people around here actually, some of them it didn't receive the best reception, but that was only mainly because of the part with the bridge where, in the movie, it's, everybody get out of your car. Oh, it's going to fall.
Yes.
And there was, in reality, there was no time for that. It was boom, boom, boom. It was gone. And a lot of people got really upset by that.
Well, there's another funny story about that. The screenwriter wanted to, there were 46 people that were lost that night, that lost their lives on the bridge. He wanted it to be 46. Well, the suits, the powers that be, wanted it to be 12. They wanted to reduce it. So he said he had this crazy negotiation where I think it got it up to 27 or 37. I forget what the number was, but it was just bizarre. So it wasn't the screenwriter's fault there. And of course, for those that have seen the film, Richard Gere is out there and he has a lot of time to warn people that the bridge is collapsing, get out of your car, like Brittany said. But in reality, it was something like 30 to 40 seconds. It came down like a series of dominoes from the Ohio side to the West Virginia side. And this was 13 months to the day after the Scarberrys and the Mallets, Linda Scarberry, Roger Scarberry, and Steve and Linda Mallet, were chased by a winged humanoid with red glowing eyes on December 16th, 1966. And it was November 15th, 1966. And December 15th, 1967. Stay on me, Brittany, if I make mistakes.
Okay.
You can. Okay.
You gotta get these things straight, Steve.
So anyway, like we had mentioned before, this was it was a three-ring circus of the paranormal. People that, normally didn't experience these things were seeing the lights go overhead. People that saw the Mothman had experiences of poltergeist phenomena. Have you ever talked to anybody that has seen the Mothman?
Not that I'm aware of. By the time that I actually, besides my pawball, but we didn't really talk about it. By the time I got as far into it as I am now, most of them had either passed away or they just didn't really talk about it. But I've talked to people who have come in the museum and have said, I lived here in 1967 and this thing was outside my door, blah, 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 So, I guess I have talked to people. It just, at this point, it just kind of goes over my head because I'm so used to talking about it. I'm not like, oh my gosh, you saw it. It's like, oh, you did? Cool.
So let's talk a little bit about what people can expect when they attend the Mothman Festival, which unfortunately isn't going to happen this year. But some of us don't tell anybody, but some of us are going to congregate down that weekend. And I'm liable to see you there that weekend, but this coming weekend. But you just can't keep a Mothman enthusiast down, Now,
this is true.
I happen to know a young lady who has, and I quote, said the Mothman Festival is the happiest place on Earth.
Yep.
And that would be you. In fact, you're quoted on the poster I made of a
Yes.
fake UFO magazine. So how did you get involved with the festival? Was it must have been a stepping stone from Miss Mothman? How did you get involved in the TNT Hayride?
Well, let me start way back.
Okay.
My mom and, Jeff's dad, Dale Walmsley, and my mom's dad, Pickle, were in the Guard together. So they have been friends for years and years and years. He's 5 years younger than my mom. And so they kind of grew up together. And then fast forward, I took guitar lessons from Jeff for many years as a kid. Yeah. So, I mean, we've always known each other. It's always been kind of like a family thing.
And again, just a second, for those that are not paying attention, Jeff Walmsley is the guy that co-founded the festival and runs the Mothman Museum. So, yeah, he's the guy that you want to know if you want to get involved with the festival.
Yes. And then after the pageant, and he knew that I, won that and everything, the next year I volunteered collecting donations at the festival. And then he's like, "Hey, you're good at talking." I kid you not. And he said, "Would you want to be one of the guides on the TNT Hayride?" And I was like, "Absolutely, heck yes, where to assign?" And so I think this is, my 6th year maybe doing it. Well, I mean, not technically this year, because obviously it's not going to happen this year, but I think my first one was in 2013.
Okay.
I believe.
I'm not sure when. The way it happened for me was Carolyn Harris, the great Carolyn Harris, who we lost a few years ago. She ran Harris's Steakhouse, otherwise known as the Mothman Diner. She was co-founded the festival with Jeff. Just a fantastic lady. She did one of the tours. Well, she asked Denny Bellamy. Now, Denny Bellamy is one of the I don't know what you'd call them, town fathers, one of the
tourism directors.
Tourism director. Okay, that's okay. See, you're keeping me honest here. Another great guy, and featured in one of Seth Breedlove's films on the Mothman. She asked him to do it, to cover her, because was so busy at the restaurant. She needed somebody to cover the ride at first, but Denny was tied up with something else, and so they asked me. And I was thinking about it, and I thought, well, heck, I can't say no to that. I'm completely unprepared, but I know enough of this to fake it, right? So. And I had so much fun. I mean, it's we'll have to describe more what the ride is like. But it's you start out early in the evening. Well, let's paint a picture here, and please fill in the gaps here. There's 3 tractors, loud, noisy tractors.
Yes.
There's only one that really pulls a cart that looks like a hayride. The other 2 have actual seats on them, and even a canopy sometimes. And
those are luxury seats.
Yes, that they'd let the old tour guide, use one of those. Except one of those seats had a broken thing in it. So if you sat on it the wrong way, you were gonna know it.
I have a surprise.
Yes. So and by the way, you and I last year got real smart, and we got those
headsets.
The headsets with the battery and the speaker. Yes, on the belt, right? Because Andy, trying to yell to people in the back of the cart or tram, whatever you want to call it, over the tractor and be heard was a challenge. But so we've overcome that now with a little bit of technology. But so it starts out early enough in the evening where it's still light, and that this is the only part of the festival that costs money. I think it's $5 or something like that. I'm not sure.
I think it's something like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
and it all goes right back into the festival, and you know, all the things that it costs to run it.
And so the line is just crazy. They finally have got this to. Back in the old days, they only, I think, had one cart, and they didn't have all the. It's a little bit like a Halloween hayride. I mean, there's some critters here and there, a few surprises, a few kids with adjustment problems wearing ghillie suits and scaring the crap out of people by jumping on the tram. And also, well, we'll get to the good part in a minute. But so there's 3 of us. There's you, There's Jeff Wamsley and me, and for several years now, it's been the three of us running, and we all. I would love to be on your tour one time just to see what you do.
We'll have to pull a switcheroo sometime.
We will have to do that. But I have to tell you, Andy, sometimes when we'll end about the same time. Every time that happens, everybody on her cart claps for her. Now, they don't always do that for me. And so I was getting kind of jealous. So sometimes when I'd pull up with the other cart, I'd say, okay, look, guys, you've got to start clapping and look like it's spontaneous so I can, one up with Brittany on this one. But so what they do is they take you, it's actually across the street from the old power plant. Where the old power plant used to stand, where the Mothman was first seen, and then you go deep into the TNT area. You see some of the old structures. The TNT area was where they created munitions for the war effort, and they were stored in these concrete igloos, which were covered with foliage, so that the enemy couldn't see what they were if they flew over, and. They still have these old, those old cement structures, Brittany, that I think the train cars used to pull underneath.
Yeah, the viaducts. Yeah.
Yes, and if you can catch some of the old photographs, the old black and white photographs of the way this thing looked in the 1940s, it's just a contrast. And Brittany, why they haven't filmed a science fiction or a slasher movie on location here, it would be perfect. So
if somebody hears that idea, they heard it from us, right? No.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you give us an idea of what do you tell your people when, as you go along, we go around, and it changes every year. There's one year Jeff had this great flying saucer that was on a rope. Yeah. With all lit up with smoke coming out of it and everything, and you could see the man pulling the rope when it was still daylight. But so you could see the man behind the curtain. But that one's not there anymore. But there's and last year I took some of my critters out of the attic that I used to use for Halloween, including a Grim Reaper, a giant spider, and all kinds of stuff, and set that up. So it changes a little bit. But tell us,
people love that spider too, by the way.
Oh yes. Tell us what happens on your ride. What do you tell people?
Well, typically, I try to start out, I tell them who I am, so they can be like, oh, what's Mothman, But anyway, I try to start off with a little bit of history and just a little fun tidbit in there. It's actually, we start out at the West Virginia State Farm Museum, and as you're starting around the curve, there is the coveted, spectacular 2-story outhouse.
Yeah, yes.
So, if you're not familiar with what an outhouse is, it's what they used in the old days. It's a hole in the ground with a little shack, and that was their bathroom. Well, this one's got one on top of the other, and I would not want to be the one on the bottom.
Oh, God.
I always make the joke there.
Well, you know what? I'll have to tell you, I'll interrupt you for a second. What I do, especially if the little kids are there, and especially if they aren't listening, I'll tell them, I say, hey, look, we're going to round the corner here. And you're going to see something that's truly frightening. It will strike terror in your heart, and we will stop the tram if you don't feel you want to go on. And so I give this big build up, and then I take my flashlight and I shine it on the 2-story outhouse, and I say, "Look at this, a 2-story outhouse. Imagine the possibilities." Now, of course, the little kids, have to describe what will happen if you're in that 2-story outhouse. They don't have any kind of a filter. But yes, so I'm glad to hear that you use that outhouse as a prop as well.
You cannot pass the 2-story outhouse.
And then tell us what happens next, the next stop.
Well, typically we run into some let's say government agents who try to get us to stop from going back there. Sometimes they might chase us and be like, hey, don't go back there. And sometimes they can be a little, let's say, loony. They tell the people not to trust me and blah, 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 blah. And they yell at us with a megaphone, don't go back there, don't go back there. But we always do anyway.
Do you ever yell back at them?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. I always give them a lot of crap.
Exactly.
And what we're talking about, of course, they're either the dreaded Men in Black, dressed like Men in Black, or they got a lot of the Keystone Cops in them too. But they they used to chase us instead of a black Cadillac. They used to chase us in a golf cart
Yes.
with a siren, and they'd have the megaphone. Stop. This area is restricted. Blah blah blah. And I'd give them all kinds of nonsense about we're allowed back here by the U.S. Constitution, and you haven't even read the Constitution. I mean, these guys are really quick. They would they had a porta john out there one time, and when we would swing back, they were always doing some kind of goofy thing with the porta john. I mean, these guys were just worth their weight in gold for comedy. But
they're the best.
So what do you when there's some areas where there's nothing much going on? Do you kind of fill them with a little bit of history or lore, or what do you do?
Yeah, I always try to at least if they don't have any idea what they're actually there for with Mothman, I try to tell them the basic idea of what happened in 1966, and I kind of try to expand it through. There's some little curves and things, and then sometimes we'll end up in a hazmat situation.
Yes.
And, not literally, but it's all to the imagination. But
what that is, Andy. Let me tell Andy.
Okay.
But usually we have something. I'm one of the guys that helps set up before the festival, so you never know. You never know what it just doesn't have a high budget, Andy. And they have a kind of a hazmat situation where they have the yellow tape, they got the fog machines, they got a couple guys in hazmat suits. And one year they had this green alien that they're trying to hide from everybody. It looks like there's a crashed UFO or something. And I give them one time a couple of my friends were there, but I usually we'll say a lot of things like I'll tell them how bad their acting is, and we're going to go back to central casting to get some new recruits or something like that. But and then so it changes. What I say to people a lot, I ask where they're from. How far away, who's the furthest that came to here. And a gentleman with a brogue spoke up one time, and he said Belfast. So he won that one.
Yeah.
He was actually from Ireland, and but it's so fun, Brittany, the interaction with
yes.
the people, and especially the little kids. I mean,
oh yeah.
Do you have any?
They're some of the best.
Any good stories of any interaction? Any?
The only one that sticks out in my mind, like hardcore, is you talked about the guys in the ghillie suits earlier.
Yes,
I know them anyway.
And that's toward. And by the way, that's kind of toward the end when you think things are winding down, and I'll say something like, "Well, I think we're home free now. I don't think we have anything to worry about now. Lay it on really thick, and then all of a sudden,
and then boo!
These two clowns in ghillie suits will yell and scream and jump on the tram and
but there was this one little girl that she was just having the time of her life. It was awesome. She was so excited. She was sitting on the inside, there were kind of it's kind of like a bus that has the aisle with two seats on both sides,
Right.
And she was sitting in there, and one of them came up and got on the tram and walked up right to her. She fell out of her seat. I was like,
no.
oh no! And I felt so bad, but then I always throw the joke in there at the end to kind of break the ice. I'm like, oh, don't worry, that's Mothman's cousin. That's the Mothman.
Well, I change it up all the time, and once in a while, some of the effects are really cheesy. Sometimes we've got two flashlights taped together with red lenses, and those are the red eyes of the Mothman deep in the woods, right? Okay, I just call them flashlight monsters. But so if I get, sometimes the kids will say things like, this is nothing, this is cheap, and I'll say, well, how much did you pay for this ride? And they'll say $5, and I said, oh, you should have paid for the $10 ride. On the $10 ride, you get a better tour guide, you get better effects. So next time, stand in line for the $10 ride. And then tell us what happens after the hazmat area. What we come up to. What is the next? What is the high point of the TNT tour?
Well, you come up on the viaduct, which it's kind of an inside joke that sometimes, back in the day, they'd call it Stonehenge, and I'll just let your mind wander from there as to what they did back then. But you come up to that, and then you kind of, get the sense of this feeling that something might just be lurking. We don't know if it's people or if it's, maybe this big thing, but you hear this terrible screech from the sky, this ah, and all of a sudden a Mothman comes flying from a tree and comes over.
Yes, and the men behind the curtain are John and Tim
Yes.
that portray the Men in Black by day during the festival, and they fly. They're inside. It's the old acid plant, and they're kind of it is kind of a Stonehenge looking thing, and it's covered with all kinds of brush and everything. And they have this ingenious low-tech mechanism to make the Mothman. They crank him back. They've got a battery inside so his eyes light up. They made it out of scratch. I mean, I thought they used an old mannequin and reworked it, but they didn't. I think it's got wings on it. It's they got a great sound effect in the speaker. And people aren't, what I do is I'll tell people, I say, well, we haven't really seen much of the Mothman since the middle 60s. We can't guarantee a sighting. And there will be no refunds, by the way, if we don't see the Mothman. Right. And then I'll make a stupid joke like all the proceeds go to Jeremy. Jeremy's the guy that works behind the counter in the Mothman Museum. They all go to Jeremy so we can send them to camp next year, or whatever.
Yeah.
So, but I'm building them up like I'm sorry. We're probably, if we haven't seen them, we're not going to see the Mothman yet. And then of course that's the moment they'll see them. They'll see. Well, what's that up there? No, I'm sorry. You're probably just seeing. It's your imagination. It's just the dark. There's nothing there.
It's a plane.
And then of course the Mothman comes over. So yes, and it's it really the star is actually the TNT area. It's so creepy at night, especially. It's creepy.
Yeah.
But yes, it is, and people seem to really enjoy this ride. And it is just so much fun doing this, and I look forward to it every year. So,
like I say, it's like Christmas to me.
It is. It's like it's like the some of these paranormal activities are like Christmas for adults. If you're into this sort of thing.
And actually, just a fun tidbit of information, if you want to see the Mothman that they send sailing to the sky, it's actually hanging up in the museum.
That's right. That's the last duty they have to perform, because everything, they take them out there ahead of time and they run them, they make sure everything's going smooth, and we always run into some problems. I mean, good Lord. And it's so funny because I have, before I was the tour guide, I was out there sometimes with them flying the Mothman. And they'd get talking sometimes, and they wouldn't notice that the cart's coming along. And I'd say, "Hey guys, you got to get the Mothman lined up," And then have you ever come around when they screwed it up when
and they
the Mothman
put it back? Yeah,
didn't fly, or one time
he was flying backwards.
We came around, and they were cranking him back, and I yelled at him. I said, "Hey, what is this? Mothman's flying backwards. We want a refund." They weren't sure it was me, but they found out it was later. And then sometimes what I do is we go by that spot where they are. I'll tell everybody, "Okay, turn around," and I'll shine the flashlight on the men behind the curtain, and I'll say, "Those are the guys flying the Mothman." So we just have a good time harassing each other and having a lot of fun. So.
That's one thing that I absolutely love about the Mothman Festival itself is it's like a family reunion, like every year, because it's always kind of like the same groups of people come back year and year and year after year, again and again, and then it's like you don't see them all year, but then they show up at the festival and it's like one big family again. We pick up right where we left off.
Well, I have to tell you, in 2006, my first Mothman Festival, I was grinning from ear to ear, and it didn't leave me for weeks, because this was a place where not only was I fascinated by the whole area of the Mothman and the folklore and the history, but it was a place where not only could you meet like-minded people, I got to talk to people like Rosemary Ellen Guiley, who unfortunately we lost last year, Nick Redfern, Ken Gerhard, Stan Gordon, on and on. Great people, great researchers that you can just spend time talking to. And of course, it has all the other accoutrements, Andy. It has it has the typical cotton candy and food. It even has a pole line. Is that what they call it?
Hillbilly zip line.
Yeah. Okay. Hillbilly zip line. Oh, and they've got plenty of Ghostbusters dressed up in the garb. And
Star Wars.
They have a full size Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
Indeed.
So, Andy, do you have any questions? We've been hogging the conversation here.
No, I'm lost.
Oh, okay.
Had a good time there. Actually, no, just one quick question, really, for Brittany. What do you think the Mothman is or was?
Well, this is my standard personal opinion answer. Just growing up and hearing the stories that I heard, and then knowing what things my family had seen, and then knowing how polluted the TNT area was and is still to this day, because lots of the waste from the TNT plant went into the water and the groundwater and pond and everything, things out there. Because now it's actually a wildlife reserve, believe it or not. Yeah, it's interesting. But I always thought that, they had talks about like owl or a sandhill crane or something like that, which are birds, and maybe it got into the water or ate something that had been in the water, like a fish or something, because a lot of people actually still go fishing out there and hunting, and that's a big thing around here. So my guess is if it wasn't something of the paranormal type or, something creepy like that, I think it had to have been some kind of bird or creature that got into this polluted water and just mutated into what we know as the Mothman now.
Right,
now,
okay.
I cannot explain how in the world it came, when it started, and then the 13 months till the bridge fell, and then it never was seen again. Like, that's just, I can't figure that one out, but I don't think anybody can.
No.
There were a few sightings now and then, but it was like everything kind of peaked during that time. And
Right.
I'm a little ambivalent on the mutated part, although I don't think that would explain everything. I mean, certainly a bird or something like that could have been damaged in some way, but some of the ridiculous, the sandhill crane and an owl. Good Lord. But then there's like you mentioned, the paranormal angle, where there was a Swedish researcher that followed Keel in there, and he found that almost everybody that had seen the Mothman experienced an outbreak of poltergeist phenomena in their home. So there's just something, whatever it was. I'm not disagreeing with you. It's just that it was a paradox. It doesn't fit a physical creature that well because of the 10-foot wingspan, and the 6 or 7 foot tall body didn't really work. Some people, Keel got reports where they heard kind of a humming noise or an engine noise close by. Other aspects, it seemed like it was more like an apparition. It didn't always flap its wings. It took off straight up like a helicopter.
Right.
So I don't know, but it was, and John Keel would tell you that he did not know what it was either. So another mystery.
And I always find it kind of interesting. Like, they talk about people getting like, conjunctivitis in their eyes turning red after things.
Yes.
That just blows my mind.
That's a good point, because that's not terribly uncommon with close encounters with UFOs, craft that appear to be lights or maybe even some kind of machinery. But it was Connie Carpenter that was passing the Mason County Golf Course that saw this thing, and she got conjunctivitis from seeing a cryptid, ostensibly a cryptid. So that's very and another mystery that we'll never solve. But in the Mothman Museum, you've got two of Jeff Wamsley's great books. That he's accumulated a lot of the stuff that's in the museum are in those books. The newspaper clippings and you talked about, the original writings, the original testimony from the Scarberries and the Mallets. And so Andy, does this make you at all want to come to the festival, or do you want to run screaming into the next county?
I want to get over there. Absolutely. I mean, I looked into it before all this nonsense was going on. We have problems at the moment about getting over to a conference, but it was ludicrously expensive. It was going to cost me something like more than £2,000, probably $2,500.
Oh, jeez.
Because unfortunately, not through a major. The thing is, you're not near a major airport. The area itself's not near a large airport. You have to fly in for miles and miles away, then have to travel in. And it's not a kind of holiday destination. So the fares themselves tend to be quite expensive. When it's not a holiday route, it's more of a business route. So they tend to get expensive. So it just made it rather unlikely you could ever really afford to justify the expense. I mean, I could afford it, but it's justifying is another matter entirely. The wife not to be too pleased, although she loves America anyway. But one of these days, I'll get out of something like that.
Well, Andy, maybe if you can somehow get on the pageant circuit, maybe you can get a free trip.
We're
always looking for judges.
Well, listen, Brittany to be the person to talk to, so maybe you guys could work something out. Well, Brittany, I think we're about at the end of our time. I know we would love to have you back on because there's so much more to talk about and everything we talked about. I am so happy you were here with us tonight. You are such a perfect choice for the what's the proper name? The pageant circuit, the pageant scene, the pageant phenomena.
Referred to as both. So.
Okay, all right. I don't want to be disrespectful, but yes,
you're not.
I'm very privileged to know you as a friend, and I told Andy before we came on, I don't think you've been depressed for more than 5 minutes in your entire life.
I don't know. I put on a good act sometimes.
Okay. Well, we'll time it next time. We'll see.
Okay.
But tell us again what's coming up next for you now. What's the next big event that's coming up?
Well, the big event that I'm going to is we have our national and international pageant in like 5 days. But we've got people coming in. Unfortunately, our UK girls couldn't come in this time, but they're all going to come next year and compete. And I have to give up my title and all those things. And we'll have new American national queens. And then after that, I'm going to take some time to catch up with my Mothman following and maybe try again some other time.
Now, are you still going to be gainfully employed in the museum? And the
absolutely.
Oh, excellent.
Are you kidding? I have the dream job.
Well, I know. I would commute if it wasn't more 6 hours away.
Right.
But, and if people want to get a hold of you,
yes.
in relation to your pageant stuff, what would they do? Where would they find you?
Well, your best bet is to look me up on Facebook. I still have a lot of friend faces out there, so I mean, typically I'll add you.
And spell your name because it has a unique spelling, I think. Both.
Yes. I'm a Brittany.
Okay.
It's Brittany. And then Sayre is Sayre.
Okay.
With the accent, always sounds even funnier. Like, Sayre? Hey, Sayre. You'll notice if I get wound up, my Appalachian comes out even worse.
That's okay. I think we can get through that. I think we can.
Yeah. I can put on my big kid voice sometimes, But yeah, definitely do that. Or if you want to learn more about our pageant system as a whole, you can go to our website. It's www.pureinternationalpageants.com. And you can kind of see what we're about. And maybe if you want to get involved in it, we have a spot for women of all ages.
Good deal. Well, listen, Brittany, thank you so much for being here. And
thanks for having me.
I'm going to look forward to seeing you within a few weeks. And
I'm so excited.
And I will be presenting to Brittany one of my Mothman, a mock magazine cover of yesteryear devoted to the Mothman. And Brittany is even quoted on it as saying the Mothman Festival is the happiest place on earth. So I'm looking forward to that. So looking forward to seeing you. And Andy, great to have you here. I know that a lot of this was kind of new to you, but great to have a fellow, somebody else that appreciates John Keel and the mystery of the Mothman along tonight.
Very much so. Very much so.
It was nice to meet you.
You too. Absolutely.
Okay, so everybody sit tight. I'll do my close out, and I'd like to talk to you just briefly after we close out, Brittany. So just hang tight.
All righty.
The High Strangeness Factor was created by Steve Ward and Andy Mercer and is copyrighted by the Paranormal UK Radio Network. I want to thank our fearless leaders here at the network, Irene Allen Block and Mark Johnson. I also want to thank Andy Mercer for his role as producer for the show, and Brian Zeller for the original music. You can also hear me weekly as a correspondent on Mac Maloney's Military X-Files on this and other networks. And I am your humble host here on the High Strangeness Factor, a displaced Yank here on Paranormal UK Radio. Thank you for listening. I will see you all again in a fortnight. Take care.